Grievous and bursting are not that bad. Hot take, wow, dude, everybody and their mom are losing their mind over the past week. Mythic plus Affix, Grievous, bursting, and tyrannical, and of course thundering. Oh, cannot forget about thundering. And I actually don't think they're that bad. Listen to me right now as I talk about this. Oh, okay, we've had a bunch of videos about affixes and how not that great they are for Mythic Plus. Bellula released a pretty big video on it. Asmongold reacted to it. We also reacted to it. And we've been talking about affixes, whether or not they're good for quite a while now. And I personally have a pretty hot take, and I think that Grievous and bursting are not that bad, in the same boat with necrotic, which was removed, and this week has been one of the most vocal weeks that I have heard from our community, from every community online and offline and all of that stuff, that this week is the worst week, or one of the worst weeks, or potentially the worst week for healers at the very least to actually push keys. One of the main factors why I think that this week is particularly difficult is because Tyrannical. I actually have, as a healer, more issues healing Tyrannical than actually healing Bursting and Grievous. And I'm not saying that Bursting and Grievous are not bad. In the grand scheme of things, all affixes are kind of bad, almost all of them. Not really all, but mostly all of them are pretty poop. And I would personally like a rework out of all of them. However, going back to my original take is that Grievous and Bursting are not that bad. Neither is Necrotic, and we've had this talk before, especially on our stream, which you can check on twitch.tv/Marcelian&Online. The problem with Grievous and Bursting is that they're both healer affixes. They're both moderately difficult to heal, but they're significantly more difficult to heal if they are both active at the same time in the same week, and they are. Thankfully, it's on a tyrannical week, which tyrannical affects bursting not at all. You'll only have bursting on ads, but then again, bursting is probably harder to deal with in a tyrannical week because ads usually die quicker, meaning that there's a higher chance that they will die in quick succession, giving you really high stacks on bursting. Certain healers have the tools to do that, certain healers don't have the tools to do that, and if you don't have the tools to do that, that kind of sucks. And as an example why bursting is particularly difficult this week is probably one example, though not all. Obviously this can change for everybody and everything is individual, blah 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 blah, but it is in the first pool of Azure Vault. If you're one of those parties that pulls the first room together with the flowers and maybe even the sleeping elementals, then, and if people don't kick Mystic Vapors because either you have too many range casters or people stack their kicks, then you will have to heal a large number of Mystic Vapor stacks, then also bursting because the flowers die pretty quick, and that is really difficult. Not to mention that Grievous is pretty much active 24/7, since Mystic Vapors will probably keep your party super low. But even that, it's doable. Sure, some classes have it easier, and we can have this discussion as to whether or not Priest should have such an easy time to negate an entire affix by itself with one spell that also has a reduced cooldown in Dragonflight, and that is Mass Dispel. You can argue that, hey, Resto Druid does the same with Rage, but it does not, because Resto Druid can only get rid of one enrage effect. Sure, you have hunters with another one enrage dispel. You might have evokers with a big AoE enrage dispel, but that's debatable because that's on a big cooldown. And sure, you can say, but if you dispel a lot of enrages, then the cooldown gets shorter. But are you going to wait until all mobs have the enrage effect before dispelling, meaning that you're going to leave mobs undispelled, or are you going to use it on cooldown or use it on the important mobs? And the important mobs that usually need to be dispelled from enrage are usually singular lieutenant type mobs or big mobs that cast, which are usually 1 or 2 per pack, meaning that you don't really want to wait until everybody has enrage effects. So that argument with, you know, overall talent for preservation or evokers in general is debatable. However, Grievous and bursting do not suck as bad. They pretty suck, but they don't suck as bad because what they don't do is they don't stop you from playing the game, which is where I think the majority of the issues with affixes in modern WoW kind of lie. And that's what my problem personally with affixes are. And in that boat, we can see the quintessential quaking. Yes, sometimes volcanic, but not always, but it can be annoying. And of course, thundering goes into that boat, storming and spyfall, all of these affixes that have to make you stop playing the game and deal with the affixes instead. Now, if you have like an amazing reward for dealing with those affixes, say you manage to not stack with everybody with quaking and you just have like 5% damage increase for the next 20 seconds or something like that, that would maybe not suck as much. But if you are a caster, you have to stop casting during quaking, and if quaking has to just so happen pop when everybody's taking loads amount of damage and you have to cast to heal them. You cannot cast to heal them, they die. If quaking starts to pop up when everybody needs to be stacked, I'm not talking about the War Mission Moon Burial Grounds, which has been solved, but not all the other events, then you cannot do anything. If Spiteful starts to spawn, you cannot stealth if you're a rogue, you cannot stealth if you're a feral druid, you cannot go drink if you're a healer, you cannot move to the next pack because they keep you in combat. You have to stop doing what you normally do and deal with the shades themselves. Sure, you can slow or root them and then just move on, but still, you're not mounting, you're not drinking, you're not stealthing, which is something that some of the specs really want to do. And again, it just sucks that you have affixes that affect some specs more than the others, so you feel kind of punished if you play something like, I don't know, like a sub-rogue or assassination or feral druid or any kind of healer that really needs mana. I'm talking about you, Discipline Priest, then it's kind of blows. Storming is also a good example. And you might take each individual affix and say, hey, maybe it's not that bad. And maybe you are right. Maybe it's not that bad to have a week of Storming. Maybe it's not that bad to have a week of Explosives. But when you couple this with Thundering that we have this week with actual boss mechanics, think about Croth in Algathar Academy, where you have all of these swirlies and the winds to dodge and the quaking and the thundering and who knows what else happens that week. Not to mention when you have to have position factor into your playstyle, it's just too much. And sure, maybe it's difficult and maybe the reward should be that the skilled players can overcome these affixes and what? And then just continue playing. There's no incentive to deal with these affixes whatsoever, so why should we have to bear through these affixes that stop us from playing the game? Plus, it's not fun. Tell me it's fun for you balanced druids that you are supposedly pretty good at clearing explosive to go into an Algathar pool. Let's say your tank wants to pull the entire tree room, and you know, we can extrapolate this into a lot of other examples of big pools in dungeons, but instead of you having to properly spread your dots, you kind of have to use Moonfire on explosives, and maybe Twin Moons will cleave onto one of the adds, but you still have to do explosives. Every explosive that you do, whether you're a balanced druid or maybe you're a different class because maybe your healer cannot handle all the explosives, or maybe your healer needs to heal the tank because the tank is taking too much damage, then you just don't play the game. You don't set up your rotation, you don't set up your dot, you don't set up your cooldowns, you don't go into the pack dealing damage. I often found myself in an Algathar or essentially in an explosive dungeon where I had to do the majority of the explosive, whether or not the healer and the tank were pugs and they couldn't handle all the explosive, whether or not the other DPS were like, my class is pretty bad at doing explosives. Half of the pack I had to do explosives. And by the time I actually got to, you know, put Sunfire out and start my Celestial Alignment rotation, everything was pretty much dead, and I just felt like, why am I even here? Am I playing Whack-A-Mole on the explosives, or am I playing Algathar Academy and I want to do my AoE rotation as Boomy? Listen, World of Warcraft Mythic Plus is fun to do large amounts of damage. It's fun to pull a lot of packs and see if you can survive it. As a tank, you can rotate your defensives. Oh my god, I managed to survive all these packs. As a DPS, oh my god, I was able to pop my cooldowns and I did 100k more damage than normal, and the healer's like, ooh, I managed to keep all these guys alive. I can't believe they're not dead. All of these things are cool, and I bet your butt that most people love to play dungeons because of at least these things. It's fun to play your class. The classes are fun to play. It's fun to go into your cooldown and do a lot of damage. It's fun to use procs and pop all sorts of things and do it, but you don't get to do that when you have to do affixes. Why? Why? Okay, sure, there should be a difficulty barrier, you know, breakpoint in terms of Mythic Plus as to how high you can climb, and it should become more and more difficult. But I don't think these difficulties should come at the expense of player enjoyment, and I don't think bursting and grievous should be the first on the chopping block if we're going to be addressing affixes, this is basically what the video is about, because it seems, by talking to pretty much everybody this week, it seems that they just want to get rid of these. The same people that wanted to get rid of Necrotic, which again, I don't think was supposed to be the first one to go. Get rid of the affixes that stop you from playing the game. Get rid of Quaking, Spiteful, Storming, Volcanic, Explosives, all of these that make you, okay, I'm a balanced druid now, but for 5 seconds I stop being a balanced druid and I have to do something else. That's not why we're here. We're here to blast. What do you think? Let us know in the comment section down below, and see you next time.
I've been loving it then, I still love it now. Still, I play WoW. Still, I play WoW. Getting better every day, let me show you how. Cause still, I play WoW. Still, I play WoW. It's getting harder to stay, but at the end of the day, it's a guilty pleasure, so just log in and play. Whether it's classical retail, I'ma do a /bow. Still, I play WoW.